We will also debate another truly outrageous case in Florida. A mother of 3 young children right now as we speak doing 20 years hard time after she simply fired a warning shot into the wall to escape her allegedly abusive husband. Nobody was hit by the bullet. Nobody was hurt. Yet she was ripped away from her kids, twins and a toddler, and sentenced to 2 decades behind bars. Tonight, we ask, is there a 2-tiered system of justice at work here? Should outrage be directed at this case? Plus, tonight, very special guest, Omarosa from Celebrity Apprentice. We all know her. She's here to talk about a tragedy in her life, her own brother's murder. And she has a whole lot to say about the George Zimmerman case.
Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the boardroom, Omarosa.
What was your name?
Omarosa.
Sorry, I know you're a celebrity. I just never heard of you.
14 celebrities, 14 egos, and more drama than even they.
Call me, 1-877-JVM says. What do you think about all these cases? 1-877-586-7297. Straight out to the lion's den. Mystery juror B37 says Trayvon could have avoided the confrontation had he simply gone home, implying the teenager bears some responsibility for his own death. Let's debate it, starting with our other very special and exclusive guest, Tashina Arnold from the hit TV show Martin. We're going to get to her in a second, but we will start with the one and only Wendy Murphy, always front and center.
You know, Jane, I think she was inartful in what she was saying. It's not Trayvon's job to go home, but it is fair to say that had he gone home, he probably wouldn't have ended up dead. What I wish she would have said is that because he stayed, because he was angry, because he acted on that anger and became violent toward George Zimmerman, the law allows George Zimmerman to kill in self-defense. I think she should have framed it as that he died because he became very violent, not he died because he didn't go home. I think that's just ridiculous.
Omarosa Manigault, but we always call you Omarosa. We all know you as the star of Celebrity Apprentice, and you are a celebrity in your own right, but you're also the victim of a horrific crime. Your precious brother murdered. We can't get into that case in depth, except to say that you know what it's like to lose a loved one. What do you make of this juror, B37, and there is your brother, and my heart goes out to you. My condolences, Omarosa. What do you make of this juror, B37, saying that dead teen Trayvon Martin bears some responsibility for his own death?
I think it's absolutely despicable for her to speak out in such a way without being informed, 1, and 2, by blaming the victim for what ultimately happened to him. I mean, I listened to her and I got sickened to my stomach because she really didn't understand the intricacies of the case or understand how people in the public were feeling. High emotions, high drama, and people really responded negatively to everything that she said, Jane.
Frank Taffy, former neighbor of George Zimmerman and friend and supporter, your reaction to what B37 said, Trayvon Martin being responsible to a certain degree for his own death?
I concur with her. That was Mark O'Mara's contention from the beginning, that Trayvon Martin was responsible for his own death. And let's not forget the facts and the evidence in this case clearly showed that Trayvon was the aggressor, because as we know, George received those wounds on the back of his head. Clearly, unequivocally, based on the evidence, Trayvon Martin was the aggressor.
Tashina Arnold, thank you for joining us exclusively tonight. You are very well known from the TV show hit Martin. You are hearing this B37 say Trayvon Martin was responsible in part for his own death, that he was the aggressor. And she points to these injuries that we're seeing. You just heard Frank Taffy, a friend and supporter of George Zimmerman, saying basically yes. What say you?
What say I is a lot of stuff, Jane. You know where I come from. You know, I come from a place where this whole Trayvon Martin issue, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And enough is enough. And you know, I've always been an activist in the sense of the media, social media outlet. I say what I feel, and I mean what I say, and I mean what I type. There was no reason for George Zimmerman to get out of his car. So this should not, we should not even be here. Excuse me, I'm speaking. We should not even be here today. Had George Zimmerman not gotten out of his car. He should have gotten, when he got out the car, he changed the whole scope of things. And you know that there is a careful balance. With this stand your ground law, and I keep telling everybody, you have to be mindful of midterm elections. You have to be mindful of, it's okay, you don't have to be in politics, but pay attention. You don't have to be a politician, but pay attention to these laws that are not conducive to your life. These laws, we just, you know, this stand your ground law just really woke a lot of people up. It woke me up as a mother. It woke me up as an African-American mother. It woke me up.
Jane, can I address that, please?
Fired up.
All right, Frank?
Jane, here in the state of Florida, the stand your ground defense is used nearly double the rate by African Americans than other ethnic groups in the state. And guess what? They have a higher percentage of winning. So it behooves these groups that are pushing.
I don't know about your statistics.
Listen.
I don't know your statistics.
What black men? What black men do you know? Excuse me. And what black men do you know that can even get a license? They're locking up young black men for having an ounce of weed. You got the search and frisk law here.
By the state of Florida.
No, sir.
And were reported on CNN today.
Sir,
no.
That means nothing to me. It means nothing to me. You know why?
It means
because
everything.
It's imbalance.
You want to change a law.
The laws are imbalanced, and that's why I'm going to be on.
Of African
Hold
Americans.
on, one at a time. I hope that's not vodka you're drinking, Wendy Murphy. Let me jump in because you made a point, and I have a case that disputes your point, and this case has my blood boiling. As the outrage over George Zimmerman's acquittal stays front and center, there is a much more, in my opinion, much more outrageous case in Florida. Marissa Alexander, this one we're looking at here, an African-American mother of 3 young children, is right now, as we speak, as we're sitting around and enjoying our lives, she's doing 20 years hard time in prison for merely firing a warning shot at her allegedly abusive husband who was out on parole. After being arrested for allegedly abusing her, he comes at her. She claims he threatened to kill. She fires a shot. The bullet doesn't hit anybody. It goes in the wall. Nobody hurt. She tried to use Florida's stand your ground law. She was rejected. She was convicted of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and sentenced to 20 years. The jury deliberated. You want to guess how long they deliberated before sending this woman, a mother of 3, to prison for 2 decades? 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Listen to Marissa describe this incident.
He managed to get the door, and that's when he strangled me. He put his hands around my neck. I thought that I was going to have to protect myself.
Were you thinking you might have to shoot him?
Yeah, I did, if it came to that.
But if you would have gone around him to go out the door, and your life would have been easier today if you did that.
Yeah, but the law states I don't have to. This is my life I'm fighting for. This is my life.
Straight out to the lion's den, Kelly Sandin, former prosecutor out of Chicago. If there is a cause that everybody, I think, could agree on, it's that this woman, for firing a shot into a wall that didn't even hit anybody, shouldn't be doing 20 years in Florida.
20 years. She's been taken away. She's been taken away from her children, trying to protect her children.
She was given a plea deal by Angela Corey.
Listen, we all know the laws are imbalanced.
Okay.
The laws are imbalanced.
The issue here,
Kelly.
Jane,
Okay, Angeline, and then we're going to go Evangeline. Okay. Yeah, Evangeline.
The issue here is that there is a law in the state of Florida where there's a 10-20 mandatory sentence. Right. The judge here found that because her children were present, one, there were children that were present, and the shot went through the wall,
trying to protect.
And her children were there. Number 2, let me finish, please. Thank you. Number 2, the issue here for the judge was that they felt she could have left the scene. As the reporter had said, you know, you could have walked out, but she didn't. Now, this shows you the inherent flaw that they have in the law.
Okay.
20 years mandatory is absolutely absurd.
I am starting.
It's absolutely absurd.
I
can't believe
their
it. I'm not
children,
going to be
Jane?
able to sleep tonight. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. There's many times I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about the terrible things that are going on in our world. This is one of them that's going to wake me up in the middle of the night. She has 11-year-old twins. They were 11 when she went to prison, as well as another little child with this man. And gosh.
And a restraining order. A restraining order.
Kelly saying in 30 seconds, tell me, I would think this would be an easy one for everyone to jump on board and there wouldn't be such division.
I agree with you. I think everyone should be behind her. I think the facts have proven out that the man that testified against her changed his story. He was on parole. He was an aggressor. She didn't shoot at him, and she probably actually wishes she had shot him. She might have gotten a lower sentence. It's ridiculous. And this law in Florida is problematic, and she suffers, her children suffers, and now they don't have a parent that was looking out for them, because who's to say they wouldn't have been hurt in the process as well?
Jane,
oh, and by the way,
Jane,
we'll continue to debate on the other side. We're just getting started. Very passionate right now, and there's good reason for it, but 26-year-old Michael Dunn accused of first-degree murder after he shot and killed 17-year-old Jordan Davis. Dunn told cops it all started at a gas station when he asked the 17-year-old, who was in the sunglasses, now deceased, he asked that 17-year-old and 3 of his friends who were parked in a car next to him, turn down your music. He claims he heard threats from those teenagers, and he claims he saw what he thought was a gun. Here's what his former lawyer said.
He was threatened. He was threatened.
In what way, specifically?
With a firearm.
Tell us what was said.
Kill that mother. That mother dead. You dead. And he sees that much of a shotgun coming up over the rim of the SUV, which is up higher than his Jetta. And it's all he sees are heavily tinted front windows that are up and the back windows that are down, and the car has at least 4 black men in it.
Dunn says he feared for his own safety, so he grabbed his gun, reportedly firing nearly 10 shots into the teenager's car. The problem is, cops found no guns inside that car. He is behind bars without bail, awaiting trial on first-degree murder. He claims self-defense, straight out to the lion's den. Let's debate this one. He claims it's justifiable.
Jane, listen. This is what I told my Twitter followers and my Instagram followers. I had to apologize because enough is enough. It's time for celebrities, it's time for people that are in public offices to take a stance and not worry about what's happening, what paycheck they're gonna get, or being politically correct. Wrong is wrong, and these laws do not work in
I don't agree with that. Can I just say one thing?
Okay, hold on a second. Wendy Murphy, Wendy.
I just want to respond to this idea that we should all be condemning stand your ground laws. First of all, they do serve an important purpose. More than half the states have them. They can't all be stupid. They've been moving in that direction for a while for good reason. Now, let me just finish.
What's the good reason? What is the good reason?
One of the reasons I like stand your ground laws in general is that I represent victimized women and children, and when they are sexually attacked, they stand no chance of
well, a lot of good that law did, Marissa Alexander. Hold on a second. I want to bring in
into the air.
Order in the lion's den. I want to bring in John Phillips, who is the family attorney for the family of the 17-year-old Jordan Davis, who was gunned down over that incident that started with loud music. I mean, unbelievable.
Unbelievable is right.
It is ridiculous.
What is the family?
Unbelievable.
Here's what's
ridiculous.
Hold on a second, though. John Phillips, the family of the teen who was killed, said this is not a racial incident. They made a very big point of saying that.
No, we have a unique opportunity with Jordan Davis's case to actually rally the entire country around an evil man. Now, whether Michael Dunn was a bigot is Michael Dunn's issue. But, you know, this family does not want to wind up with Trayvon Martin, too, from the perspective of dividing this country.
It ain't going to happen,
you know,
John.
it's
Hold on.
No, Frank, it's not. It's not,
no,
because what Michael Dunn did is completely different.
Let him finish. Go ahead, John.
Well, what Michael Dunn was completely different. He fired 10 shots. There wasn't a feather on or a hair on Michael Dunn's head that was touched. And, you know, we want to see Angela Corey and Angela Corey's team actually, you know, wind up with one that the public feels good about this time.
Well, Frank, briefly, I want to give you a chance to weigh in since you were jumping in there.
You know, I've reviewed this case, and I concur with John. This is clearly a case that this man was a bigot. George Zimmerman was not a bigot or a racist. So we're not going to go down that road again. But I do side with John on this, and I would not defend that man, Michael Dunn, at all.
Well, let me
say
Frank,
this. Frank, will you follow me and agree that Michael Dunn's situation now mandates reasonable gun laws? Because what Michael Dunn was doing was entirely with his rights as a concealed weapons holder. You know, we've got to find some method of compromise.
Well, first of all, let me say this. We reached out to the attorney for Michael Dunn today. He gave us a statement. We're going to show you that on the other side. And also, we're going to debate this. I worry that they're going to say we lost Zimmerman, so let's get Michael Dunn. What's the reaction to that on the other side?
I don't know that he'll carry a gun. He has more reason to now than before because there are so many more people who want him dead.
Not one more! Not one more!
Why would this man just shoot him?
Trayvon today! Justice!
Not about the economy.
We, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
This case was incomplete at best at the time it was assigned to us.
They didn't have the DNA. They didn't have all that stuff.
Criticize us. Make sure it's constructive. And please make sure you know what you're talking about. Stop yapping.
You know, we don't get to pick our witnesses.
I do not have any memory of the day of autopsy. Are you listening?
More protests and more backlash to the not guilty verdict in the George Zimmerman case. Juror number B37, that mystery juror, has said more controversial things, just released more interview segments from her. We're going to play some of those for you. And we've got another case out of Florida that some say could be the next George Zimmerman-style controversial mega trial. And it involves another 17-year-old African-American male shot by an older male. Now, this one is Jordan Davis, 17, and he was shot by Michael Dunn, 46 years old. And Michael Dunn says he fired in self-defense. Now, it all started when they were at a gas station and the teens were allegedly playing loud music in their car. Michael Dunn says, turn it down. And next thing you know, there's a confrontation. And he claims he was threatened. He claims he saw a gun. He fired approximately 10 shots, killing the 17-year-old teenager. No gun was ever found. Now, we reached out to shooter Michael Dunn's defense attorney, and he told us, quote, any person who believes that this case was about shooting a teenager over loud music or even insinuates this fallacy has either no knowledge of all the facts involved or are clearly trying to sensationalize this case for political purposes only. Now, of course, critics are claiming that racism at the heart of both incidents, Trayvon's and Jordan Davis. But guess what? In this latest case, the teenage victim's father, Jordan Davis's father, does not believe that.
It just happened to be an African-American child and a non-African-American person that pulled the trigger. I think that's the only comparison, but I don't think the reason is the same. I think the reason for this gentleman was just strictly anger and having the availability of a weapon.
Straight out to the Lion's Den. Omarosa, is the racial makeup a coincidence, or do you believe that race plays a factor in this case?
First of all, race always plays a factor in our judicial system. I just spent the last year and a half, almost 2 years, fighting with my brother's trial, trying to bring his murderer to justice. And I have to tell you that you don't realize that there are all these salient points that people make, the decisions that they make and how they proceed come from their racial biases, whether they are aware of them or not. And so when people look at this case, this white man confronted with 4 African-American men in a truck, of course he's making decisions based on race and race alone, because they didn't have a weapon.
Why can't it just be based on a gun?
Hey, I got one for you, Omarosa.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Frank,
Listen,
let me just tell you something. When a white man can shoot 4 people without worrying about whether or not they're going to hurt them, he worried about his life because they were 4 African-American men. That's why.
Evangeline Gomez. Evangeline, you're usually very, very talkative, but you haven't been able to get a word edgewise tonight.
Look, what matters here is like the rap music. I mean, if they would have been playing Pearl Jam, would it have been better for him? His reaction really was not rational at all. It wasn't reasonable at all.
But
okay, he
made
here's
and then went back into rap music.
Got a gun.
Let me have a second.
Hold on, let's see the panel for a second.
Shot 10 times. That's an element of premeditation as far as I'm concerned. Of course, I don't know all the facts, but based on what I'm hearing right now, it really sounds like a strong case for first degree.
All right, John Phillips, the attorney. Hold on.
It is a strong case for first degree.
Go ahead.
It is a strong case for first degree, and here's the thing: if we get caught on this rabbit trail of race, we don't address the bigger problem, which is where guns are in this country, and Michael Dunn being a legal gun owner and being able to shoot and kill. And not only that, Jane hadn't gotten to the worst part of the story. Michael Dunn then got in his car, ordered pizza,
and drove
spent a night in a hotel, and didn't even call the police.
Be reduced down to just a policy
Kelly Sangden, former prosecutor out of Chicago in the bright red outfit. Weigh in here, because here's the thing that kind of knocked me off my chair practically. The attorney for Michael Dunn says, I worry they're going to say we lost Zimmerman, so let's get Michael Dunn. And Special Prosecutor Angela Corey is involved in this case as well. That's pretty shocking.
That is always a consideration, but you have to think about it. I mean, right now, prosecution in Florida doesn't look good. Casey Anthony, in a lot of people's opinions, got away with murder. Right now, lots of people say Zimmerman got away with murder. So they need to make an example. They need to prove that when they're prosecuting cases, they know what they're doing. They need a victory. So they may very well make an example out of him. I don't know enough about the facts specifically. It sounds like a first-degree case to me, but I definitely think the prosecutor's office has egg on their face right now because they tried to make a political statement and they didn't succeed. And Casey Anthony, that was just embarrassment.
All right, Wendy.
Can I just be so bold as to say that it's not a coincidence that Angela Overcharger Corey is attached to all of these cases? It may not be an overcharge here. I'll concede that I agree with people. It seems like an intentional killing. But she overcharged George Zimmerman. She overcharged the case involving Marissa, and she incites people. She's a horrible government official. She was praying with the family. She called Zimmerman a murderer after he was acquitted. She's the government. She's behaving like
by the way, we have to say we contacted her office, and we did not get a response today, but she's invited on our show anytime. Whew. Our debate continues on the other side. So much to talk about. So much to talk about. I keep thinking about that woman behind bars for 20 years because she defended herself against her allegedly abusive husband by simply shooting into the wall. Didn't hit anybody. More when we come back.
Did you cry in that jury room?
I cried after the verdict. I didn't cry out when they were reading the verdict out in the jury room because we were all crying before we went in. And then,
what do you mean you were crying before you went in?
Well, we were in a separate room when the foreman handed the bailiff our verdict. And then we were crying back there before we went into the jury room. So they gave us about 20 minutes to try and get everything together.
That is mystery juror B37 talking to Anderson Cooper, and she's emotional there, and she said her heart went out to the family of Trayvon Martin, but then when it got down to the evidence, this mystery juror said, well, after looking at all the evidence, she was convinced Trayvon started the fight and threw the first punch. Listen to what she told Anderson Cooper.
Do you think Trayvon Martin threw the first punch?
I think he did.
What makes you think that?
Because of the evidence of on the tee, on the sidewalk, where George says he was punched. There was evidence of his flashlight and keys there, and then a little bit farther down, there was a flashlight that he was carrying. And I think that's where Trayvon hit him. And I think Trayvon got mad and attacked him.
And let's go out to the Lion's Den. Now, she pointed to George Zimmerman's injuries. We've seen those pictures so many times, but we could show them to you again if you want to see them there. The bloody nose that looks somewhat fractured and the cuts in the back of the head. And she said that was very influential in leading her to believe that he was acting in self-defense. Kaylee Saindon, former prosecutor. You're a former prosecutor. Do you think that the prosecution in this case did enough to explain those injuries? Do you think that they maybe should have co-opted them right from the start and acknowledged that there was a tussle? They only seemed to get to that toward the end of the case.
I think you're right. They should have led with that. They should have had a viable scenario and stuck with it. There were too many questions that they left to the jury, which did equate to reasonable doubt because the jury said not guilty. They should have said, here's what we believe happened. They should have had one version of events, turned it around and said, listen, this is somebody who got punched in the nose. His head was beat on the sidewalk. I don't care what anyone tells you. Look at this picture. What would you do? If you're armed, you have the right to be armed, and the law says you can protect yourself if you're in fear. What would you do? The prosecution should have went with that and said, hey, listen, now you're in this fight, turn it around and make Zimmerman the aggressor so that now Trayvon's fighting for his life. But they didn't do it.
There was no evidence of that.
Wouldn't have made any sense, yeah.
You can't make stuff up when you're the prosecution.
You put together the facts and you make a salient story. That's what you do. You say,
there was no evidence.
I'm sorry. There was no evidence to support it.
I disagree.
No evidence to support that. No evidence.
Absolutely.
Okay, hold on. Order in the lion's den. Omarosa, let me ask you this. Toward the end of the case, they seem to acknowledge that Trayvon could have been on top. In fact, they got on top of a dummy, purporting to be Trayvon himself. Now, what I think they should have said right at the start, the prosecution, is when there's a tussle, people roll around. And when they roll around, one person's on top 1 second, another person's on top the other second. And so you're going to hear from both sides that some are going to see Trayvon on top, some are going to see Zimmerman on top. That's because they were having a tussle and rolling around. They seem to get to that toward the end. Do you think they should have done that right from the start?
Jane, absolutely. They should have established that there was a confrontation and that these two ended up rolling around. But let me just tell you, this confrontation would have never happened if George Zimmerman had not got out of his car and disobeyed what the 911 operator said and followed and stopped. Frank, you make expressions all you want, but when it becomes a crime walking down the street with iced tea and Skittles, it's a problem. No, you know what, Frank? I'm not going to get off of it because Trayvon would still be here if he had stayed in his car. Hold on. Your truck, Frank, stay in the truck. Please. If you had not stalked this kid, he would still be alive.
Never stalked
point
him.
Blank.
Wrong
okay,
words.
Did stalk him when he was told not to follow him. He's
on the other side.
He profiled him and
I
he
have a thought too, and I know Wendy does too. Everybody has a thought on the other side. I want to go to John Phillips, who's an attorney out of Jacksonville, Florida, representing another 17-year-old African-American teenager who's been killed, his family. You know, this juror, B37, said, we want to find him guilty of something, but the way we read the law, we couldn't. She's talking about George Zimmerman. John Phillips, do you think there's a problem with the law? Because Omarosa just said he shouldn't have gotten out of the car and followed him. But is there a law against getting out of the car and following him?
There is a problem with the law, and there was a problem with, you know, with all respect to John Guy and Bernie, there was a problem with, you know, when you're doing closing argument, you build a house. And you start with the foundation, and that foundation was manslaughter here. And the manslaughter simply pulling a trigger with intent. And that's where they should have started and built from there all the way up to murder too. But
John,
they didn't.
They never disproved self-defense.
There was nothing.
Okay.
They never disproved self-defense.
Evangeline Gomez.
Yes. I mean, in this situation, look, everybody, ever since this trial occurred, everybody thinks they're a juror. They think they were there. They don't know any of the facts. They didn't pay attention. They read headlines, and they've drawn conclusions where they shouldn't have drawn conclusions. There was a jury. That's what our legal system is predicated on. They heard the facts, and they made a decision. We need to move on. And in regard to whether he pursued him, he followed the instructions of a non-emergency operator.
Saying move on, our community is not moving on. The African-American community is not going to move on. There is going to be rallies and protests.
Hey, we did after OJ, so what's the deal?
And they're going to keep pushing. When people say move on, it appalls me when people say that.
Okay, hold on a second.
There is a young boy who is dead, a family who is grieving.
But
don't say just move on as if there is not a big issue.
Lost a son, too.
Yes, but you know what?
All right, come on, you're all talking.
And so we fight for all of the Trayvons. We fight for all of the Trayvons today.
Wendy, go ahead. Could you raise your hand?
I just, you know, not every death is worth a social movement. I respect how people feel. I'm not black. I'll never be black. I don't know that feeling. If they want to have a movement about it, I think that's acceptable as long as it leads to peaceful and important and productive conversations. I think some of what we're talking about is just basic fear and disrespect. I mean, you know, George felt disrespected. Trayvon felt disrespected. They both felt fearful. And that's where I think we should start having a conversation.
But on
it is not about murder. It is not about guns.
We must come together. We must have dialogue. That's what makes this country great, that we can have these discussions. You can't have a discussion like this in some parts of the world. More on the other side. I want to thank my panel in the Lion's Den, a fantastic panel for participating in this important discussion. And we are going to stay on top of the 2 new cases that we brought you tonight. Very important, bring you updates on those cases out of Florida. Thanks for joining us, Nancy Grace. Up next.